I am really hoping you guys are feeling, if not as energized, half as energized as I am after yesterday. Wasn't that amazing? So much passion and talent and interest and tools that I learned and shared, and I just feel it's so rare to go right now. It's fantastic. And today it's like we're doing building blocks. And like I have never been under the impression that this weekend is going to solve our problems. However, I do believe that if we're all working together and we're using this weekend as a stepping stone to our next step, and our next step, and our next step, we are absolutely going to be successful. And for me, that means replacing Walden next year and having a ripple effect around the country, and for us to be vigilant in continuing to resist the Trump and GOP agenda. Woo! I know that we can do it, and it's all about continuing to work together for that cause, for that goal. So in continuing on with yesterday, we got a lot of different ways in which we can be working together. And Sarah, who is a professional everything, organizer, activist, amazing human being on so many levels, is going to help us with actually, for us, coming out with what's next. And from there, what we're going to do with Sarah today, and she'll go into it, but from what she's going to do, then we're going to sort of take the baton after her and talk about how we take the next step after this weekend. So, if that's okay, Ron Morgan from the Democratic Party is going to be on hand. He will be around all day for you to ask questions, and you can refer to him during this plenary group as well, plenary session. And without further ado, I bring you Sarah Westover.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you all for being here. I can't say how much I have an appreciation for the grassroots organizing you all are doing, for people who have come from different parts of the state to start talking about, building our resistance movement and building our communities, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'm going to do a very lightning speed round of introductions, like name and where you're from, because I think it's important that we all know who's in the room. So again, my name's Sarah Westover. I actually grew up here in the Rogue Valley, so I'm a rural Oregonian, perhaps not as rural as some of the folks who have come here today, so thanks for being here. I actually was in choir in high school and sang in this room, which I'm not going to do today, but it's very different now. But okay, well, maybe later. We'll go out for Indivisible karaoke. Great. So I grew up here in Southern Oregon. I got involved as an activist when I started college. I grew up in a very low-income family. I was the first person in my family to graduate from high school. I was the first person in my family to go to college or to register to vote. So, when people tell you that, activists have to be professionals or you have to have some specialized knowledge, absolutely not. Totally disagree. Anybody and everybody can be an activist, and we should be engaging folks in our communities. Activism is not about hierarchy. It's not about specialized knowledge or experts. It's about you. It's about people being together in spaces to make changes for our communities. So, thanks again. So I went on, I got really engaged in college, and I started working on environmental issues through college clubs. One of the first things I did as an activist was went and gave public testimony to shut down the Boardman coal plant, which is currently Oregon's current largest fossil fuel. So I got really engaged there, started getting involved with voter registration. When I graduated from college, I actually went back to SOU as a campus organizer. So I started working with college students and young people around political issues, including running the largest voter registration drive in Oregon's history. So we registered students, college students, registered 55,000 people in 2014 and 50,000 people in 2012. And that was the largest voter registration drive Oregon has ever seen. It was college students doing that work. So when let's be cautious about saying millennials aren't stepping up, because we're here and we're doing the work. We may just be doing it a little bit differently. we're in school, we work a lot, so that's the thing. So after working with students on legislative issues, like making college more affordable and on voter registration, I went on to work on some other community-based grassroots issues. So how many folks know about the Jordan Cove LNG pipeline here in Oregon? Oh, a lot of folks. So I was the campaign organizer for that campaign through Rogue Climate, which is a local nonprofit, for about a year. And we had no money and had very little public awareness about the issue. And within a year, we had built up a broad, diverse, grassroots, community-based coalition that eventually resulted in us defeating that project at the federal level. Now it's coming back. So we still have this structure, this coalition we've built in place to continue fighting that pipeline. I've also worked a little bit on legislative campaigns. I worked on Tanya Morrow's campaign for Senate District 3, so I have a little bit of experience there. Although really my background is in grassroots movement building and grassroots campaigning, which I think has a lot of overlap with the work that you all are doing. I also, right now I'm a volunteer with the Rogue Action Center, which is a local nonprofit based in Phoenix. And I'm hoping to run a totally nonpartisan and nonprofit candidate school with two of the folks who help run that are in the back here, Sarah and Colette. And this election season, we have 8 candidates on the ballot who are grassroots candidates here in Jefferson County.
Nice.
And I also got elected to city council myself. In Phoenix, Oregon. Nice. So a couple times up. So anyway, just wanted to kind of show a progression of somebody stepping into activism and doing different things with it and showing a picture of what that could look like. But I really want to hear about you, and I want to hear who's in the room. I know some folks had to take off and go home. So if we could start with a name and where you live, and if you go on a rant, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. So keep it short and sweet, and we'll start on this side of the room and just continue back.
Okay. My name's Jenica Fay. I live in Talent.
And stand up.
Yeah.
Skip Andrew in Ashland.
Alana Monaco, Eagle Point.
Jim Bachman, Ashland.
Alan Hallmore, Talent.
Alexander Britton, Klamath Falls.
Alex Spencer, Klamath Falls.
Kay Proctor, Medford.
Rosemary Vasquez Sisters.
Josh Berger, Sisters.
Heidi Fernandez, Camp Sherman. Paula Sermon Sisters.
Sid Snyder, Bend.
Lisa Flexner, Ben.
Tom Durant, Ben.
Lori Doherty. I'm originally from Pendleton, but I'm retired to Ben.
Bill Trumbull from Redmond.
Mimi Trumbull from Redmond.
Jeff Golden, Ashland.
Paul Dietrich, Ashland.
Terry Martin, Medford.
Michelle LaBelge, Madras.
Sarah Kellums, Hood River.
Lana Dunn, Hood River.
Ron Adams, Ashland.
F. Harpster, newly moved to Grants Pass.
Charlotte Cutt, Grants Pass.
Doug Walker, Grants Pass.
Jessica Sage, Ashland.
Wendy Van Camp, Medford.
Karen Lake, Ashland.
Donna Breedlove, Medford.
Your name and where you're from?
Jeannie Rogers, Ashland.
Teresa Safe, Ashland. Claudia Little, Ashland.
Sharon Melnick, Klamath Falls.
Donna Henderson, Maupin, which some people haven't heard of. It's about 45 miles south of Dallas.
Susan Berry, Ashland.
John Nelson, the Dallas.
Aaron Vance, the Dallas.
David Kirk, Phoenix, and I'm going to chat just a second. I missed yesterday, and I'm so sorry. I want to let you know that I spent last week in eastern Utah with my very conservative Mormon family. So good to be there. And I only lost it once. the day the House passed the bill. And I told my parents exactly the impact, the potential impact on me personally. They could not believe it. They said, no, that can't happen. I said, it's happening. You have to get involved. So, thank you.
And David Kirk, I know I introduced our steering committee yesterday. David Kirk is also on our steering committee at ORD2 Indivisible, as is Jenica Fay, and Brett Leather will be here this morning. He's also on our steering committee.
Hi, I'm Ron Morgan, Aloha.
I'm Gary Roberts, Ashland.
Sarah Spantail, Ashland.
Colette Parry-Miller, Medford.
Tim Shekel, the Dallas.
Catherine Foster, Ashland.
Mary Renaud, Ashland. Emma Rower in Clam Falls. Erica Goldman, Portland.
Sue Parsons, Central Point.
Lynn Lay, Ashland.
Lynn from Talent. Trish Metzger from Phoenix. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Barbara Fontaine, Powell Butte near Prineville in Crook County.
Maury, Ashland.
And let's see, where should we go? Back here?
Nancy Beaver, Ben.
Marty Koopman, Ashland.
Joseph McCastro, Gold Hill.
Holly Foster, Ashland.
Mary Stana, Portland.
Paula Skirtovich, Ashland.
Did we miss anybody?
Yeah, these cameramen.
Karen Burgess, Ashland.
Susan Hall, Ashland.
Jake, I'm just happy to be here.
We're very grateful for your voice.
I just want to say thank you so much for being here, and I just want to add an extra thank you for folks who traveled from out of town. Can we give some of those folks a round of applause? Yesterday's workshops were helpful and that folks learned some new things and new skills to take home to your individual chapters and help to develop some more skills out there. Today, we're going to use some of those things we learned yesterday and implement them to start talking about our strategy. I'm not sure that, originally we were talking about breaking people out regionally so you can develop a plan, but I actually think it's a good idea that we develop kind of our big picture vision for ORD2, of how we work together, who we are, some of the connections that we need to make at a statewide level to make our movement most effective. So I'll explain some of that moving forward. But today is mostly going to be discussion oriented. I do want to give a little context before we move into that, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to start with goals for our session today. We want to develop an understanding of our district, including advantages and disadvantages. So you'll get some of the numbers and some of the general feeling of what our district looks like overall. We're going to talk to each other and try to build some consensus around who we are as Indivisible Congressional District 2. That's what CD2 means that we keep using. And how do we do things? We're going to identify Indivisible's specific role or niche within a larger resistance movement. So which piece of the puzzles do we take on? We're also going to try to get everyone on the same page, or at least provide a starting place for that, about some of our overall goals and start breaking some of those down a little bit. But remember, this is a starting place for a conversation, not the end. We'll hopefully have more opportunities in spaces like this, and we're certainly going to be doing work regionally. So we're going to provide tools to take home for regional planning too. So the materials we use today, I will make available for folks to go home and use for folks who couldn't make it out here today. So you can start thinking about, okay, well, we did our big picture strategy, but what does this really mean for sisters? Or what does this really mean for Madras? So we'll make all those tools available for folks. I'm going to stand on this side. So first, I just want to start out by talking about, well, what is a campaign strategy? And Rich touched on this a little bit at the beginning of the first session, but I just want to go over kind of the definition we'll be using for today. So a campaign is essentially an organized, purposeful effort to create change. And it has to be guided by thoughtful planning. Sometimes we make mistakes and make big boo-boos if we haven't done some of the intentional research and planning before taking action. So we're providing a starting place for that today. So before taking action, successful campaigners and planners, we plan. That's where we start. So the first thing we learn about is the existing situation. What are the current state of things? Then we talk about who's affected by this issue, by the campaign, both positively and negatively, and we're going to talk about that in groups today. We're also going to talk about what changes could improve the situation. So that's really the heart of strategic planning, right? So we don't just want to get bogged down in what the problems are. We want to start talking about what the changes necessary for change are going to be. So that's what we're going to focus on. Then we'll move into talking about what resources, tactics, and tools are available to implement our campaign that will actually address the issues that we care about and start moving towards solving those problems. So we use our strategy overall in every aspect of our campaigns, whether it's planning, and just as we're moving through. Campaign strategies are meant to be progressive, meaning that we continue to look at them, we change them, we develop them as we learn more. So again, this is just a starting place, very baseline. We're creating the foundation of our campaign and our resistance movement in Southern Oregon. Or not just Southern Oregon, sorry. First, Congressional District 2. So used to talking about Southern Oregon. So now, with a little help I'm going to point to Ron a couple times here too, but I just wanted to give some general background. And there's a lot of experts here in the room, or people who, there was somebody here from Bend who was talking about having, raise your hand if you're the person from Bend who was talking about having all the numbers, yeah? Okay. So I think that as we continue to work together as a district, we should continue to share resources and information. So this is just part of that information, but there's others in the room who have access to more. So just a little background on Congressional District 2. It's one of the largest congressional districts in the entire United States, size-wise. So I think we're the 7th largest nationally. We're pretty big. So it covers roughly 2/3 of the state. It's big. So it includes Baker, Crook, Deschutes, Gillum. Is it Gilliam or Gillum? Gillum. Grant, Hardy, Hood River, Jackson, Jefferson, Klamath, Lake, Malheur, Morrow, Sherman, Umatilla, Union, Wallowa, Wasco, Wheeler counties, and parts of Josephine County too. So we've been represented by Republican Greg Walden since 1999. And going back in history, it's been mostly a Republican seat. I think the last time there was a Democrat in the seat was like in the 50s.
1980, Al Ullman.
There's never been?
Al Ullman for 27 years, up through 1980.
Different district.
Oh, well.
Okay, so there's never been a Democrat in the seat.
It came over.
I think there has been.
Okay, it doesn't really matter. The point is, you get the impression that it's a pretty strong Republican stronghold there. So I wanted to go back and give some of the context and the numbers for the last 3 congressional elections in the district. So 2016, our most recent election, you can see kind of the votes, 272,000 people. So a total of about 380,000 people voted in Congress District 2. 272,000 of those voted for Greg Walden, which accounts for about 71%, almost 72. Jim Crary, who is Jim here? No. So Jim lives down here. He ran and he got 106,000 votes for about 28%. I don't think there was a third-party candidate, but sometimes people write in like Mickey Mouse, and that accounted for a little bit, like 3% of the rest. In 2014, Greg Walden, again, we're seeing very similar breakdowns. Oh, I'm sorry, that's cut off a little bit. So about 300,000 people voted, a little bit less, which is less than people voted in 2016. Why would that be? Exactly. So again, we see Walden coming away with about 70% of the vote. The Democratic candidate at the time was Aaliyah, is that what that was?
Yep.
And she came away with about 25. And then a Libertarian candidate ran, and they came out with about 3%. So we're seeing some trends here. And then the last one I'll show is just 2012, where it was a little bit different. Greg Walden came away with 68% of the votes, still having about 300,000 people voting. The Democratic candidate, Joyce Seegers, came away with about 30, which is a little bit higher. And then the Libertarian candidate came in around 2%. So we're seeing some trends here. We're seeing that, if we really want to work to unseat Walden, that we have some work to do. And that this is history going back for a couple of years. So yeah, a couple of questions here. Let's go here.
So again, with the numbers that my colleague put together, and you'll get this electronically, but I also have hard copies if anybody needs a hard copy. The other thing in the 2016 election to be aware of is that more people didn't vote than voted for Jim Crary. So while Greg Walden got 70% of the vote, there were still 124,000 people in the district who were registered voters who didn't vote despite it being a presidential election.
Absolutely.
That number is likely to go up in the midterms, unless we do our work.
Information on party affiliation of the non-voters?
That was, so you've got turnout by party there. We had 134,000 registered Democrats voting, 174,000 registered Republicans, not voting, sorry, 134,000 registered Dems, 174,000 registered Republicans, and 130,000 non-affiliated, but she didn't break it down by who's non-affiliated.
And so we're going to go through that in just a second.
Thank you for that.
There was a question at the back too before we hop into that. No? Okay. Groovy. So, and I'll make this all available too, so folks can take this home. So I just went to the Secretary of State's website. Like this information sometimes feels like it can be really hard to get, but you should definitely connect up with people like Ron at the Democratic Party of Oregon, or you can do some fact finding by yourself by going to the Secretary of State's website, who collects information on elections, right? You can also go to your local county clerk's office to get local election results, and most of them have websites. Here in Jackson County, the website isn't like really all that great, so you might have to go in and talk to them. So we see that among Democrats, there were 143,000 in the district who were registered as Democrats, and of those, 87% turned out. For Republicans, there's 187,000 registered Republicans, and about 90% of them turned out. So one of the largest groups of registered voters that we have in Oregon is non-affiliated voters, NAVs, we call them. So a lot of that can be seen as, I think we want to take a second to talk about NAVs. A lot of the reason that people are NAVs, or Ron, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. NAVs are not a monolithic group. They're not particularly partisan. They don't act partisan. Oftentimes they reflect the ideology of the neighborhood they're in, not just the county or the district. If they're living in a blue neighborhood, they'll vote proportionately with their Democratic neighbors. If they live in a Republican neighborhood, they'll vote proportionately with their Republican neighbors. But there's a large chunk of people who do not affiliate, who do so not because they're fed up with the political parties, they're fed up with politics. They're not engaged. They may register to vote so they can vote in the presidential election and then disappear for the next 3 years. They don't, they're not nonpartisan, they're non-political.
So I saw a couple hands shoot up, so we'll go Sarah first.
Motor voters started like a year ago or so?
Yeah, last election was.
Increased the NAVs significantly, and aren't those more maybe people who just haven't even bothered to look at what their voter registration is possibly?
Yeah, there is that. The motor voter program brought in folks who not only walked into the DMV to get a driver's license or to register their car, it also went back through DMV records and retrospectively pulled people into the voter rolls. And a lot of those folks have no idea, one, that they're registered, and two, that they were registered as non-affiliated voters. Some do. The Secretary of State followed up their automatic registration with a postcard, but it's a little beige thing about like this big, and it's easy to ignore. And that gave people the option to either opt out, they could send the postcard back in and be unregistered to vote, or they could change their party affiliation.
We had a question here too? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, do you have the breakdown of how the non-affiliated voters who did vote broke in that election in terms of who they voted for? In the Walden Prairie?
That might be information that Ron has more access to.
Well, we are able to access the information that a voter turned in their ballot.
Right.
That they voted. But once their ballot is processed, their vote's anonymous.
Sure.
So the only way we'd be able to approximate or try and calculate how a segment of voters actually voted, for whom they voted, is if we did exit polling or surveying. And as far as I know, nobody has done that in CD2 in the last few years.
But one of the things actually Ron and I were chatting about a little bit is an opportunity, is that we can do what we call voter identification at the door. So this is something we can do in off-campaign seasons or when we're not in campaign mode, is we can go out and we can talk to people who are registered as non-affiliated and ask them survey questions and get a sense of whether or not they're more right-leaning or more left-leaning or whether they really just are kind of apathetic and are non-voters. So that's something that we have access to, and that's some information we can get access to through the Democratic Party. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get into tactics, but I did want to bring that up so that folks know that that's an option.
Well, you'll know whether they voted or not.
Yes.
That you'll know from the data that comes out.
That's true. So we can prioritize the people who have been consistent voters and go talk to them at the door and get a sense of, are they more likely to vote, blue or red? Okay. So I'd like to move us forward and just to show, so the breakdown, the other big party to be aware of is independent. So Ron and I were talking about independents. A lot of people register as an independent, which is the name of a political party, because they think they're registering as a non-affiliated voter. But it's really just the name of a political party. So the turnout among independents is actually really big, and they're a sizable group in Congressional District 2. So it's 80% of independents turned out to vote, and there were 27,000 of them. So just like NAVs, that's a group that in Congress District 2 that we want to pay attention to. Is there anything you want to add?
Oh. Yeah, go ahead, question first.
I have a question. What is their basic belief? They're all independent.
Well, the IPO was started a few years ago by some folks who were discontented.
Can you break down IPO?
Independent Party of Oregon. And in the realm of politics, we call it the IPO because it does differentiate them from independents. And they decided to form a party because one of the Democratic candidates was pissed off they didn't get enough support in their election. So they marched off and formed the IPO. And they immediately started getting party growth because people confused them with being non-affiliates when they filled out the voter registration form. And they've denied this and denied this, but we've done polling. We actually paid for a poll last year, and 80% of people who are in the IPO don't know they're in a party.
80%?
And
they're smart on that part, right?
It's very smart, very shrewd. And they have a process for their platform, which is online. If you're an IPO member, you can vote for it, and very few people participate in it because very few people realize they're in a party. And it's all about process, basically, like get rid of the caucuses, the party caucuses in the legislature, and it's all kind of vague. So anybody can be a member of the IPO without actually having an ideological stance. It's kind of a non-ideological third party in the middle. What's happened over the last few years is that moderate Republicans who have lost their home in the Republican Party, like Chris Telfer, who ran for treasurer last year in the IPO, and Newt Buehler actually was rumored to become an independent, have sort of galvanized around the IPO. And it's like they realized, well, here's this mechanism, here's this political party that doesn't have, that's rudderless, basically. We could take it over. So.
Yeah, let's take it over.
So Ron, it's not affiliated with the American Independent Party at all?
No, it's not affiliated at all.
So I guess the reason I wanted to provide some of this context and information is, without getting too in-depth and too wonky about it, is that it's nice to be informed by data, and we should definitely use it as a tool. But it's kind of, without its counterpart, which is organizing, then it's kind of useless. So we can use it to the extent that it's helpful, but I don't think politics is all just a number game. I think it's about going out and doing things and using the information we have to support that work. So we could talk about numbers all day, but we're not going to. We're going to talk about action. So the last thing I want to talk about from a numbers perspective is just kind of a crash course in what a win number means. So a win number is essentially the number of votes that you need, the bare minimum number of votes you need to win in any given district. And we calculate our win number by talking about, or by averaging out the voter turnout in the district we're talking about over a 3-year period, so the last 3 elections. So for us, that's 2012, 2014, and 2016. We see the overall turnout in congressional district 2 has been, pretty decent, 82, 71, 79. So we average out that number, and then we multiply the percentage of people we think we're going to get to vote in the next election, and we multiply it by the number of registered voters in the district. And that gives us how many people are actually going to vote. So once we have how many people we think are actually going to vote, then what's the bare minimum percentage we need to win? 50% plus 1, right? So that gets us about, our ballpark number is 195,000 votes is the minimum we need to win. And if you remember, going back a few slides, if you remember, that's about 100,000 to about 90,000 to about 100,000 votes shy where we are traditional. Does that make sense to folks? Okay. So it's helpful to have some of that for a little bit of context this is around the ballpark. We have a lot of work to do if we want to get just to the bare minimum of votes we need to win.
I have a question.
Sure.
So I don't understand the details.
Say it louder.
I don't understand.
Please stand up.
As far as the details of motor voter.
Yes.
I'm wondering if when 16-year-olds get their license, if they're automatically registered to vote, and if we know how many 16-year-olds are in District 2 who would possibly be able to vote next year.
Good question. So no, it does not register 16-year-olds. In Oregon, you can register to vote when you're 17, so long as you will be 18 by the next general election. It won't register those people, so we're not looking at some huge inflated number. But again, like we were talking about, when you get registered to vote through motor voter, it registers you as a non-affiliated voter. So those are people worth following up with, right, and talking to, because they may be people who don't usually vote. They may be people who don't know that in Oregon we have closed primaries, right? That's something that, do folks know what I mean when I say that? Does anybody want clarification?
Yes.
Okay. Yes? So in Oregon, just real briefly, so does that answer your question about motor voter?
I guess, so I'm wondering if we're looking at those young people and specifically considering targeting, like going into high schools, going into youth organizations, if they're not captured by that motor voter registration, but they will be eligible to vote.
I see what you're saying. So they will, if they're going to the DMV, they will be captured by that. You have to be 17, is what I'm saying, and then have to be 18 by the election.
So, but if they got their driver's license when they're 16?
Okay, I see your question now. So yes, it's always worth doing in-person outreach. Absolutely, we cannot rely on motor voter. We should still be going into high schools and registering those folks who will be 18. We should still be going, there's, like I was talking about earlier, I worked for the Oregon Student Association, which has students registering their peers to vote in every single public university in the state. Because the DMV doesn't always capture those people. There's one thing I know about millennials is that we don't drive. We're the least likely generation to drive on the entire planet. We ride bikes and we walk and take the bus. Yes, absolutely. Person-to-person voter registration still needs to happen and be a priority. Yes.
Besides that, and my name is Charlotte, teachers register students all the time in high schools and at community colleges. There's always a voter registration drive. And if you know teachers in high school, you might want to talk to them at community colleges.
And we can too. Or better yet, we can train, like if folks have friends or kids who are in high school, training them to register their peers to vote and helping them to organize their own voter registration drives. So we'll talk a little bit more about those kinds of things when we get to tactics. But very quickly, I do want to touch on closed primaries. So in Oregon, you cannot vote in a primary, which is essentially where each party decides on who their candidate is, unless you are registered as a member of that party. So for example, in the last presidential election, I was registered as a non-affiliated voter, like a lot of millennials are, And I switched it to a Democrat so that I could vote for Bernie Sanders. So that's something that we have to be aware of. A lot of people in Oregon don't know that. And that's...
You can go online and change it.
You absolutely can. If you're already registered to vote, you can go online and change it. But that's an important piece of voter registration education that we can be doing for our communities.
So in terms of the...
Stand up, please.
I'm sorry, this is Josh. So in terms of the primary for Walden's seat and the Democratic primary, if we have a bunch of Democratic candidates and you want to help select the person who will go against Walden, you have to be a Democrat.
That's right. So we have primary elections that come up in the springtime. So our primary election comes up in about almost a year from now. So that's when we decide on who is the Democrat. If, there's 4 people who want to be the Democrat who runs against Greg Walden in the general election that happens in November, our primaries is where we decide. So it's a Democratic face-off, right? So that's when that happens. And the Republicans do the same thing.
So, sorry, Paula from Sisters. So we could switch back and forth. So Republican could switch to Democrat and vote for the worst candidate in the primary and then switch back.
I don't know about the efficacy of those kinds of programs. To really make an impact, you might have to have a lot of people do that, and then, what if they forget to switch back? Anyway, so that's I think that's a separate conversation that people can talk about whether or not to sabotage the other parties' primaries. But I do want to move us forward because we're running a little behind. So those are some of the numbers pieces, and again, there's a lot to learn about that kind of stuff. There's a lot of information out there, and I hope that we create a network to share that kind of information together. But don't be afraid to go seek it out for yourselves. Go to the Secretary of State's website, go to your county elections office, or ask folks at the Democratic Party of Oregon.
I have one question. Sure. So the independent can't vote in the primary, except for the independent.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the only other party in Oregon that has enough people registered with its party to run a candidate is the Independent Party of Oregon. So the Green Party in Oregon can't run a candidate right now because they don't have enough people registered with their party. Does that make sense? On the ballot.
Yeah,
That's a good question. I'm not sure what the threshold is. Does anybody know offhand?
No, I think it's 5% of the number of people who voted in the last gubernatorial election. Some weird formula.
So the Independent Party could run a candidate, and that's what we're seeing back when we go back to those slides with, Greg Walden and stuff, is that we're seeing independent candidates running as well, which sometimes can siphon votes. They're more likely to siphon votes away from him than they are from a Democrat. So.
One last question. Is it very difficult to change the closed primary law?
That's a good question, and I don't think we have time to get into that today, but I think that's an ongoing question for a lot of states. It's actually, it's not so much a law as the parties actually make that decision. So it's a conversation to have with, the Democratic Party, it's a conversation to have with the Republican Party, and yeah, that's a longer term issue. So we'll take one more and then we'll move forward.
So just quickly, it seems like the take home, Donna, is that it's important to be registered with and encourage people to be registered with the party of the candidate that they want to support in the primaries. Otherwise, otherwise that opportunity is lost. So whether you're doing it as sort of sabotage or some other way, it's important to be able to have that.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have a really contentious primary. So if you have like 2 really good candidates, or if you know that it's going to be competitive, it's important to have people vote in the primary. And then the more people we have participate in the primary, the more engaged they feel moving into the general election. I think will be more invested in participating in the general. So we want to move us forward from talking about numbers and move forward to talking about electoral campaigns and kind of their connection to and differences from what are called social movements. So let's see, where do I want to start here? So I think a lot of the most successful electoral campaigns are built as part of social movements, that have social movements as the foundation. Can somebody think of an example where that was the case, where an electoral campaign was run on a movement? Yeah, okay, great. Bernie Sanders, right? So, and potentially Trump too, yeah, absolutely, yeah. Populist movements, right? So I want to talk a little bit about what I mean when I talk about the difference between electoral campaigns and social movements. So electoral campaigns, when we're running somebody for office, usually the overall goal tends to be, let's win this election. So they're very time-bound, they're very specific in terms of their goals. So they're win-driven. Electoral campaigns are also very much shaped by the electoral timeline. So we were just talking about the fact that, you know, when we're running a candidate, there's the primary, and then there's the general election, and when it's over, it's kind of over. So it's really time-bound by all of that. Electoral campaigns are resource-intensive. So what do I mean by resources? Money, staff, people. Yeah, absolutely.
Time.
Time, yep. Yeah, there's a lot of that goes into electoral campaigns. So we talked about staff. Also, electoral campaigns tend to be led by parties. That doesn't mean, you know, that the volunteers don't get involved or other organizations, but kind of like the head of that leadership that leads those campaigns tend to be staff and tend to be party. So that's something, just a dynamic to be aware of. On the other side of that, we have social movements, where, can somebody give me an example of a social movement that's happening right now in our country?
Even in Montana right now, Quist, he's within a few points of the Republican candidate with a fraction of the dollars being spent.
Okay, I don't think that's quite what we're talking about right now, but thanks for the example. So I heard Black Lives Matter. What else? Healthcare, climate, abortion, women's rights,
Indivisible.
Indivisible. Good job. 15 Now. Those are examples of nationwide social movements. So the overall goal for social movements is not just to win the election, it's to create social change. Social movements tend to be issues driven. So all of those things that you just mentioned are issues. Women's rights, lack of health care, 15 Now, those are issues that are based, or, you know, Black Lives Matter. Those are connected to issues that play a very real role in people's lives. Not to say electoral campaigns can't be issue driven, I think that they can, but very often they're candidate driven. So they're based on a person as opposed to issues, and sometimes that's not the best thing. As opposed to being shaped by an electoral timeline, social movements are in it for the long haul. This is steady work that's ongoing. Sometimes there's not a definite end date. Sometimes, you know, social movements last for years. I think about the civil rights movement. That wasn't a time-oriented campaign. It was broader than that. Social movements work to shift the balance of power. So in the work that we call organizing, that's what organizing works to do, is we're not just trying to win a singular election, we are trying to put the power into the hands of people and shift that power dynamic. So that's part of what a social movement tries to do. Social movements are very frequently, and the best social movements are led by people impacted by those issues. So 15 Now, who's that led by?
Minimum wage.
Minimum wage workers, people in labor, people who are working in the service industry and at McDonald's. Those are the people at the forefront of that movement and doing that work. It's the people impacted by the issues. And as opposed to being like party-based, very often social movements are community-based. It's a specific subset of the community. So with Black Lives Matter, things like that. So they're a little bit broader. Does anybody have any questions about the way that I framed kind of social movements and electoral movements? Or electoral campaigns, sorry. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how we can kind of blend those together. There's no reason that an electoral campaign can't be built on movements as a foundation. So let's start at the top. If we run an electoral campaign, let's say that we're working to get Walden out of CD2. And we lose, and we don't have the rest of this pyramid, you know, underneath it, what happens? We go back to square one. It's over, it's done. You know, people, maybe volunteers who were working on the electoral campaigns just go back to their daily lives, they forget about what they were working for. But if we have a movement or an electoral campaign that's built on a movement, and what happens then if we lose the campaign? We keep working.
For the next one.
We keep working in our communities on the issues that we care about. We keep working and growing. So that way, the next time that campaign comes around, we have a better shot at doing it. So again, I guess my really ugly noir pyramid is really directed at demonstrating that when we run movements that are based on issues that connect to real people and real people's lived experiences in our communities, it primes us to be better and more prepared to participate in electoral campaigns. It also gives a better framework around our electoral campaigns. I know, how many people sometimes feel frustrated about the way campaigns work in our society? Absolutely. So I think that's kind of, one of the issues that really spurred the Indivisible movement to begin with is a frustration with the way things work. So let's start talking about changing the paradigm. Let's make sure that our electoral campaigns are built on movements, which is why we're focusing on issues and movements today. So, here's how today is going to work. We are going to break out into 6 breakout groups, and it'll be kind of just a hodgepodge of mix. And together, we're going to try to work to create our shared vision, goals, or at least provide a starting place for that as Indivisible for Congressional District 2. So remember, Rich was talking about, when he started yesterday, he was talking about strategy charts. And essentially that's what we're doing today. We're just asking questions and brainstorming and combining all of our awesome brains to come up with answers to some of the basic questions that will create the foundation of that pyramid. So we'll start talking about issues, we'll start talking about who we need to connect with, and talking about what our goals are overall. I also want to mention here, before we jump into all of this, the Indivisible guide gives us a starting place, right? But it does not give us a strategy. It really doesn't. How many folks have read the Indivisible guide? Okay, great. We're all starting at the same place. So the Indivisible guide is written by congressional staffers who have some ideas about things that might be effective in targeting members of Congress. So, I'd say the 2 main goals that come away from, the 2 main takeaways from the Indivisible guide is resist the Trump agenda and target your members of Congress. But it doesn't talk about what the issues are, what that really means, or how we do that in our specific communities. So one thing I want to mention too is we're going to talk today about our congressional district overall, because we're all here in the room together. But what talking about these kinds of issues in Jackson County might look totally different than it does in Klamath County. So I really encourage folks to take this model home and brainstorm with folks who live in your communities. And I'd actually just like to take maybe a minute or two to ask folks, one person from each county who's here, just to volunteer to take a minute to talk to us about what their community looks like. What are a few key points about what their community looks like that they want the rest of the group to know? So we get an idea of how diverse our congressional district is. So do I have a volunteer, one volunteer from Jackson County? Could be anybody. No, I'm going to start souther. So who's the southmost? Klamath? Klamath? Anybody from Klamath?
We all line up on the bottom of it.
We're all on the border of California.
Oh, okay. Well, here, let me do it this way. Let me go back to our slide here, and we'll just go with this. Okay, so do we have anybody here? Well, I'll do it this way. Anybody here from?
You want me to start with Josephine? It's south too. I mean, we're all in
Sure,
California.
go for it, Josephine.
Okay, Josephine County, Grants Pass. What was the question?
I think a lot of people in the room probably, how many people have been to Josephine County?
Okay,
but there's people
taxes. We pay the lowest taxes because we invited people who do not want to pay taxes to our county because of the ONC, and it's huge. So we lack our infrastructure, we lack jobs, we were timber extractive, that's gone.
Can you tell what ORD2 is?
Oregon and California lands that were once given to railroads, repossessed by the federal government, and then designated as timber harvest lands.
And unlike Tillamook County, which invested those monies, Josephine County spent all of it, and so we have people not paying taxes and who specifically do not want to invest in the county at all.
And economically, we have giant disparity. We have some of the greatest amounts of wealth and some of the greatest amounts of poverty. We have a giant disparity.
If you want to look at what the U.S. could look like, come to Josephine County. Politically, it's Republican.
Great, thank you for sharing. Somebody from Climate?
I'm not familiar with where it is on the map.
In the bottom, it's just Grants Pass. DeFazio has most of our county.
Yes.
Right there. It's just that. So when people say we're not jerry-rigged, those of us in Grants Pass go.
Yeah, right.
But it could be for numbers, because
It's exactly
they
right.
balance the numbers, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
To get the population center.
And the reason we're doing this is because numbers only give us so much of a perspective, right? We want to hear from our community about what their communities look like. Somebody from Climate? Give some, yeah, go ahead.
I believe the history is very similar, except that we have lots of agriculture and a lot of very old ag. So there was a timber industry and the unions, and we had all this great blue stuff going on, and then the timber industry collapsed and the unions were gone, and so we were left with all the old ags. And it was very, very, and therefore it's very, very red, and everyone's conservative, and all the old guard is conservative and scared.
Isn't there a Native American population?
And there is a Native American population, for sure. And it's 4% of the country. 4%? 4%.
To Klamath, I just heard people asking.
I am geographically not the best person. Let's see.
East to Jackson.
Bottom right.
There we go. Okay.
Let me add a couple more things about Klamath County that I think are really important. 40% of our county is below the poverty line, and the impact of that there's only like 2 or 3 main employers: the hospital, the schools. We have a large jail win, and they've cut their workforce also. And the Affordable Care Act has been doing to Klamath amazingly. Our hospital was always in huge debt. The hospital's solvent. We started a wellness center. We have 10 new doctors staying in the community, primary care. And the president of our hospital still is a Trump Walden supporter. I can't quite make sense of that. But Porter County's had tremendous benefit from the Affordable Care Act.
Do you have much need for migrant labor?
We do, and migrant labor is a big part of the workforce. We have a migrant head start, and that's another aspect of Klamath County. We have a Hispanic community that is very walled off from the white community, and making bridges across that community is very, very difficult. And that's something we've actively been kind of engaging with Indivisible Immigration Committee, the ACLU action, reviving League of Women Voters, strengthening that institution, so that we have some structures to start trying to reach and bring. But it's an amazingly separate community. And do you know what percentage that is?
I think it's 12%.
12%.
But that might not count people coming in and out of
Right, in terms of registered voters, but there's also a
Well, no,
large
in terms
not
of
registered.
census.
And I think our counties, we're going to interview this chief of police and ask what their policy is around community policing and ICE, but I think our county's pretty good about protecting community policing compared to some of the other counties I've heard.
Thank you. Thank you, Clement. Is this an extension of Clement?
No.
No? Okay. I want to move on to, we have a bunch of counties to cover, so let's keep rolling. Go for it.
I was going to talk about Jackson County a little bit.
Okay, sure.
Jackson County,
is, the last time I checked on the voter rolls, I think there was something around 43,000 Republicans, something in that ballpark number. The last time I checked was during the vote for the GMO agricultural ban. It was around 43,000 Republicans, around 36,000 Democrats, or 39,000, something, these don't, you know, something like that. Actually, you probably have the numbers you're sitting looking at them right there. You don't have them?
No.
But a very large independent crowd, and also a very large number of non-affiliated. As far as the impacts of the Affordable Care Act are concerned, the fact that the two largest employers in the Valley, Providence Medical and also Asante and all the affiliated clinics, it's the single largest employer in the Valley, I should say, in Jackson County. So, so that is a very big issue here in Jackson County. As far as, you know, the spread of where we are kind of politically, Ashland tends to be leaning Democratic. Medford actually is much more of a mixed bag, I think, than a lot of people realize.
Yes.
There's more Democrats hiding out in Medford, and I believe it has the largest population of Jackson County.
Isn't Medford the largest population of the entire congressional district?
It is. Actually, I heard that Bend.
No, we're bigger.
Medford is still
Medford is bigger than Bend.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
What do you think are the central issues?
What's that? Issues. What are the issues? I have to say that I think the affordable, you know, maintaining the benefits of the Affordable Care Act, I think, are probably way up there as far as issues for people who are located in the Medford area. I think in Ashland you get a more diverse set of concerns amongst, you know, people who are more concerned about environmental protection. That tends to be, you know, again, falling along party lines, but that's not an over-sweeping characterization, I think, of the voters. I think they're, you know, you get more diversity.
We'll just, I'm trying to keep us on time, so we'll give a few brief comments about Jackson.
Yeah.
Go for it, Maureen.
For Jackson County, I think a lot of us are facing jobs.
Yeah.
For, you know, our young people are moving out because they can't make enough money to stay here. And so I think the minimum wage jobs are a big issue, probably throughout the district.
I think income disparity, I think, is also another issue. I mean, there's some people who are in Jackson County who have a lot of money, and then, you know, very much, you know, as you were describing, a lot of people who are low income.
So one thing I want to say to Jackson County, keep in mind, there's a lot of us in this room, and that we're in Jackson County right now, and so I want to cut us off because I think there's a lot of people here who are more rural, and I want to hear from them as well. But thank you all for your comments. There's a lot going on here, and I'd love to talk about it all day, but we'll do it another time. So let's keep on moving. So we did Josephine, we did Klamath, we did Jackson, as opposed to moving regionally, just whoever wants to go. Is there another county who wants to speak up?
Do it.
Go for it.
All right. That's it from Ben. So Deschutes County. Deschutes County is a changing county. So it has the highest in-migration of any county in Oregon and at one point in the country. And so it is a fast changing in terms of demographics. It has its own internal conflicts in that it's dominated by Bend, and there's a lot of bad feeling around that from some of the other places in Deschutes County. And demographically, you know, the city of Bend is currently about 85,000. In the next 12 years, it's going to be at 115,000. It's incredibly fast growing. And the in-migration breaks down into a couple different demographics, a lot of retirees, and then a lot of millennials. And despite the fact that jobs for millennials is a terrible problem, as is housing, but that's everywhere, affordable housing. And but the difference is that the millennials come anyway, and because the jobs aren't there, and so there's a large makers movement, tech industry growing, people finding their own way and starting their own businesses.
That's working remotely.
Right, and the thing about tech, you can work remotely, okay, so that helps a whole lot for a number of people. And there but there's a huge gap in both income and assets, and that plays out in the ways you'd expect it to. Like so many places that were built on extractive industries, it goes through a lot of boom-bust stuff, and when it booms like crazy, and when it busts, it goes way south. Right now it's booming like crazy, and to the dismay of a lot of people who live there. There is the usual urban-rural divide within the county, and one of the other issues that I'm guessing even most people in this room may not be aware of, that is huge in Deschutes County and is only going to get bigger and is going to happen everywhere across the state and across the West, is water issues. And that ties again into the ag versus the urban. 80% of the water goes to ag for just a tiny bit of the actual economic of agriculture, yet it's culturally incredibly important. And so it's the difficult thing to honor that and still try to be data-driven. So, and for those of us who are more data-driven, that's a problem.
Yeah, water on Klamath Ledger too.
Oh, yeah, also Klamath is a huge thing there. There's another point I want to make that is important, but... Huh? Go ahead.
So a couple of the major industries in town are healthcare. So the Affordable Care Act is incredibly important. That's the #1 employer. And that's the #1 employer across Deschutes County, and I think also if you include Jefferson and Crook, but I'll let you guys talk to that. And then secondarily is tourism, which is so dependent on natural resources, public land access, and water.
That's good. The public lands is actually a really big issue in Deschutes County as well, and that there are now so many of the jobs that are available are service jobs, and again, because it went away from the extractive industries where people actually had good paying jobs, and now it is service jobs. So.
And what thing, so politically, what's the landscape?
Okay, sorry. Well, let me look at the Democrats for 1 second. Even though I mentioned the retiring boomers and the millennials as being the most in migration, that's true in absolute numbers. In terms of percentage growth, though, by far, it's the Hispanic population. It's still a small portion, but it is the fastest growing. I'm sorry, you asked about.
Oh, just politically with
breakdown. So again, the county is itself outside of the urban areas is deep red, of course. Bend is just reached the point, I believe, where the number of registered Democrats outnumbers the number of registered Republicans, but still loses, I think, to the non-affiliateds. But it's all very close. It's almost like third, a third.
Great.
But the trend is clear. And that is starting to happen in a number of the other larger, call them larger municipalities within Deschutes County, being Redmond, Sisters, Lapine stays pretty deep red.
Okay, great. Thanks, Deschutes.
Don't forget Prineville.
Back here? Quick, go for it.
Okay, Crook County, traditionally timber and agriculture, basically ranching.
What are your biggest towns?
Prineville is the only incorporated town in Crook County. Traditionally timber and ranching based on public lands, grazing permits and timber harvesting. We had 6 major timber mills in Prineville in 1980. And up until Bill Clinton was elected president, Crook County was a bellwether county across the United States. That means that whoever was running for president and won, Crook County voted for him. But since then, it's gone all Tea Party. And with some, because we're on the edge of Grant County and Wheeler County and Harney County, there's that militia, other kind of anger stuff. You can see the glow on me. So it's a very conservative, and if you talk to the typical conservative person in Crook County, what their issues are, it's our traditional rural values. Whatever. And, you know, goddamn government.
Except for the pretty crazy.
Yeah. But, you know, I've lived there since 1976, and it's an amazing community. And, you know, people are neighborly, and they will reach out if you look just like them. But, you know, it's like everywhere else. Jobs, healthcare. I also, though, want to say, you know, the more red part of the district is to our east. We're on the edge of Deschutes County. And a lot of people who can't afford to live in Deschutes County move to Prineville, and I watch the cars go by every morning and come back every afternoon. We also have Facebook and Apple data centers there, brought in jobs and new ideas and new people. And they get involved. So it's like a lot of other parts of, you know, while we were really floored by the 2008 Great Recession, we've had some good leadership at the city level and the county, and have pulled up in a better position, I think, than a lot of other counties.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Crook. Appreciate it. Just so everybody knows, I'm giving 3 minutes to each group. Go for it.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on your presentation. We've had vigorous Democratic Party, county party in Grant, brand new county party in Harney County, and the militia takeover of the Malheur bird sanctuary last year was a very polarizing and galvanizing issue in those counties. The county judge, who is the chair of the county commission in Harney County, was a Democrat, and they had an election last year and elected another Democrat. And it's significant because that county commissioner, that county judge, stood up against the occupiers. In Grant County, they had a sheriff's election last fall, which was very contentious. The sheriff there was a pro-militia guy who actually the occupiers were on their way to see him when they were intercepted by law enforcement last year. And that election fell within like 45 or 50 votes. He was reelected. So those counties, although they are red, there's a divide there that can be embraced. Yeah, no, honestly.
I just want to say too, is like local elections matter.
Yeah.
And they paint a different picture of like what our communities look like and the power that we're able to garner and to build on in our community.
And we're having our second quarter state central committee meeting in Burns in June. And the sheriff of Harney County asked to speak to us, and he's a Republican. Yeah. So, yeah, he is a good guy.
I might just add, with respect to Malheur County and some of the other counties in Eastern Oregon, one of the little known secrets is that the federal government is a major employer there.
Right.
So, and that was one of the divides, I think, over Malheur County, because a lot of people do work for the Forest Service and
Absolutely. Single family. All right, so another county, step up. Let's go here.
Jefferson County, I've lived there.
Where's New Jefferson?
7 years, but I didn't get involved until recently. What I've noticed is very poor. There's about, Madras has about 6,600 people, and I would break it down to a third Caucasian, about a third Native American. Confederated Tribes is north of Madras, and a third Hispanic, Latino. There's a huge, that seems to be an increasing population. They work the farms there, and we're a big carrot seed producer, probably in the world, and so they're needed there. And a good place to see this mix of poor people is at the grocery store, where you really see the third breakdown. And the Hispanic people are always speaking Spanish, not English. So it's hard to communicate with them except for with your face, smile, say hello. Healthcare is important. If we lose that, Jefferson County will be in trouble. We have the other end of St. Charles Hospital in Madras, and a lot of the tribe is represented by Medicaid, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. Plus, I think there's a percentage, 39% of the people in the county rely on the Affordable Care Act. It's conservative. The paper is conservative. It's owned by Pemplin and out of Portland. They own a lot of small.
Those Native Americans and Hispanics.
Oh, that I don't know. I don't know yet, but I will. There is one small prison, minimum security prison in Madras that provides some employment for guards.
Anybody have any marijuana is a big thing in the county?
Right, the tribe wants to do their own business with marijuana.
So marijuana is a big issue in Jefferson. Any other last thoughts on Jefferson? Is this on Jefferson?
Well, because I work in the three counties, the Shoes, Jefferson, and Cook County, for different programs. I am a suicide prevention, and I work for sexual education as well. And we have the more high drop school in all Oregon, divided in the three counties. And we have a very high drug problems over there, like amphetamine and that's for the education part, for the sexual education part, we have a lot of problems to get in Craig County. They don't let me teach health education in Craig County. And and we have a problem in Redmond with the health education. They keep us to teach health education in the schools in that. I want to compliment it, that you have idea how that three counties working, because that's the programs that work. And the level of the suicide is very high in Jefferson. It's for girls and women, and girls is more high, and the Native American, they're all over Oregon combined.
Thank you for that context.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. So we have Jefferson, we have Josephine, we have Crook. Who else we got?
The neighbor of Jefferson.
Okay, Wasco.
Wasco is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, county area-wise in CD2, I think. A great portion of it is on the Columbia River and impacted by the National Scenic Act. So in the Dalles, for instance, that constrains its ability to have urban expansion. So there's a lot of discussion about how to grow and staying within our boundaries. What does that mean? Google is a new player in Wasco County. It has 3 data centers. Each one that's been built is twice or more in size than the last one they built. And they have bought up all the remaining, almost all of the remaining industrial land in the Dalles. The Dalles is the major urban center. It is an old community. It has the oldest, well, maybe the second oldest water rights in the state. Astoria, I think, might have the first. So that's good in terms of water supply. There's about 16,000 people in the Dalles. Schools is a major problem because of facilities. We don't have any money. We've been broke for years. And our facilities average more than 60 years old total. So it's a bad scene there. But our graduation rates have gotten better. We have gained 20 percentage points this year to graduate about 80-something% of our high school seniors. It used to be around 60. So we've really worked hard on that. Let's see. The unknown fact, it's about 51% Democratic registration, but we have a lot of inactive Democrats, so that's a potential for us. It's not a red county, it's more like a purple county. Our major money makers are cherry orchards and farming, wheat growing. The south of county sometimes feels ignored from the rest of the county, so that's a problem. We're impacted by the Mount Hood National Forest, so fire is a big issue, and also coal and oil trains going through the gorge, big issue with the oil spill, derailment in Mosier. That has made major, actually there's some benefits to that because there's all kinds of new rules coming out about that transport, and Friends of the Gorge won a suit, which means that Burlington Northern on the other side has to clean up their act, and it costs them millions of dollars. They have to cover their coal cars, or they're doing a study which will lead to that.
Thank you. Does anybody have brief
Oh yeah, wind
comments?
farms is another one.
What is it? Brief addition.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a brief addition.
Yeah, very brief addition, because I represent South Wasco
Stand,
County, which
please.
is actually, sorry, Donna Henderson, I represent South Wasco County, which is almost, does feel like actually another county in Wasco County. So the only thing I'd add to that is that it is, it connects with and includes part of the Warm Springs Reservation, which is huge. And it's mostly ag and ranches, wheat farmers and ranches. And a lot of people who were unemployed from when the timber industry kind of went down, really went down. So a lot of poverty and a lot of agriculture. Those are a very different set of concerns actually than the northern part.
Fire.
Thank you. Thank you for adding that, y'all. Another county?
Oh, sorry, Hood River County right next door to, oh, did you want to add about?
No, I was just going to throw in one of our largest employers is the hospital, which now has benefited
Heard about a lot of
from.
this.
Yeah.
And then we also have the largest privately owned regional jail, Northern Oregon Correctional Facility.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're in Hood River County. It's a geographically a smaller county in our district. It's the very northwest corner there, and we're neighbors to Wasco County and along the Columbia River. Hood River, the city of Hood River, astonishingly is only about 7,000 people, I think. It feels bigger. It's a big tourist area, and then our county also includes the town of Cascade Locks, and then up towards Mount Hood, the towns of Parkdale, Odell, and the town of Mount Hood. Yeah.
What's the rough population of the county?
The county about 20,000, and then in Hood River, I'd say we kind of consider White Salmon, Washington, across the bridge from us, sort of part of our metro area community. So the backbone, the old industry that's still going very strong is orchards, pear and apple orchards mostly. There's a historically timber there, becoming less and less of a forest. Then a lot of people we're involved with the dams and hydropower and fisheries. Then healthcare is big, and Providence again. What a force they are in our district. What else? High tech, then, so mostly across the river, but we have new people coming in with doing the drone kind of airplanes. A lot of young, sporty people, windsurfing and that kind of tourism.
Wine.
What is that?
Wholesale ale.
Well, yeah, breweries. Well, we have about 5 breweries, I think, at least 6. And 30% Latino. So, like we heard from other districts, that's a big part of our population, and I think it's maybe the largest percentage-wise of any county in Eastern in our district. But also feel pretty insular, and there aren't that many bridges between those communities. They're mostly a little bit more up valley, towards Parkdale. Historically came there because of ag, but many generations now, and starting to move up the ranks a little bit in the Democratic Party in Hood, yeah, Democrats. Anything else, Sarah, should add? Oh, okay, so yes, housing, just like you guys are talking about in Bend, and so third most, so housing costs have really increased as tourism and newcomers are there. So politically, we're changing more to more democratic. Greg Walden's home is in Hood River, so he's been popular there, but just won by 5 votes this cycle. So he did not win in the city of Hood River, but had stronger support in the county.
Are the Hispanics, are they citizens, and if so, are they registered?
I don't.
There's now a presence in the Hood River Democrats, and I know that there's.
You please stand.
Can't hear you. There is now a presence in the Hood River Democratic leadership of Latinos, and I think there's an effort to become more engaged, and that's something that's actually a goal within our group, is to build those bridges.
Thank you.
Migrant population there as well. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jill. Another county? Do we have more, or did we cover it? Got one over here?
Well, I just wanted to make the observation that while this is Oregon District 2 Indivisible, if you look at who the counties that are represented, it really should be called Interstate 97 Indivisible. And that's an issue. I listening to Mr. Buckley yesterday, he talked about, the population centers are Hood River, Bend, and Medford, and that's basically all that we're focused on. But I think that's the wrong perspective. 75 to 80% of the district is in what I would call deep state Eastern Oregon, which is predominantly agriculture, cattle, wheat. I'm the person that pointed out that District 2 for 22 years was represented by a very powerful Congressman Al Ullman. Now that has switched over. Eastern Oregon, used to be traditionally working class, Roosevelt Democrats. That changed after the Reagan Revolution. But you shouldn't write them off, and you want to make sure that you don't I heard someone use the term redneck yesterday. That's insulting, and we don't want to create enemies. We want to create bridges. And I do want to point out that Umatilla County, I think there's 40,000 people there. Hermiston is overtaking Pendleton, and Hermiston has a 30% Hispanic population. Again, I don't think that they're very connected. I don't know that they vote. But I just think that I think the only county that's represented here that's on the other side of 97 is Crook, is it? And you connect to, you're on 97, so basically.
So we still have work to do in terms of reaching out to more rural communities and engaging them. Just 1 minute, because I do want to move us forward. So it sounds like the thread of your comment is that we have more work to do in engaging.
Well, and just be sensitive to the idea that many people in Eastern Oregon look with suspicion on people from Southern Oregon and very close to California.
Absolutely. I think that's a good dynamic we should all be aware of. I think, too, it makes sense to talk about our population centers in the sense that if we're talking about an electoral campaign, that's part of the work that we have to do. But thank you for bringing that up. I think that's important. So very quickly, I'll take a few comments, but then I want to move us forward because we've got some strategizing to do. I see all of your hands. But I just want to say that, I'll take a few comments and then we're going to take a break and then we're going to jump back into strategy.
I just wanted to mention, because I've heard this a couple of times, I don't know if everybody knows how you're all here today. So what Terry did was she went on the Indivisible Guide, and she actually downloaded every single Indivisible chapter in Oregon District 2. And we sent invitations to every single group. And there are groups in Eastern Oregon. A lot of them will not give us phone numbers. They won't even share their email addresses with us, and I think you all know why. But it's not like we just targeted Bend and just targeted Jackson County. We went to every single Indivisible chapter, and you're the ones that came. But it's not like we're trying to exclude anybody. my sense is that if we have another retreat, and I'm really hoping that we do, and we'll talk about that later, it'll be further up north, it'll be closer to Eastern Oregon, closer to the rural areas, and it'll attract a lot more people in District 2. But that's how you're all here today, is because of our very wide invitation that went to every single Indivisible chapter.
Are you going to share that knowledge of where all of the sites, at least just where they all are?
You have that knowledge. It's under the Indivisible guide.
Oh, it is on?
Yeah, everybody has that information.
So I see a couple of hands, and I'm going to take a break real quick. Can we just say a quick thank you to all the event organizers for today? Here and one here, and then we'll move into our break.
I'm Sarah again from Hood River. I want to acknowledge my desire to bring attention to the people who aren't here is in no way a criticism of the organization, but just I feel that as the woman over there spoke, so we heard from 8 counties here when we're not hearing from 12 counties in our district. And I did add up the population of those counties, and that's 180,000 people. And so I am aware of the effort of the outreach, and it's amazing. And I just think it really is something that we need to focus on and build on, and to go east, to go into those spaces. Just like Alma, who did the presentation on Hispanic outreach yesterday, I think the same is true for our Eastern companions. We need to go to their spaces. I'm not sure how to do that, but I'm just encouraging everyone. So we've heard from 8 counties. There are 12 counties who represent 180,000 Oregonians who aren't here.
And part of our strategy session today, thank you, Sarah, and part of our strategy session today will be discussing who are those other people who aren't in the room who we need to work with and we need to reach out to. So part of that discussion could be about recruitment, about sending people out to talk to our neighboring counties. Do you have something too? Yeah.
So Jessica just said, we know why they didn't give us their telephone numbers or their email addresses. I actually don't know why. Please stand.
When I started putting together the master list, I think it was in January, I began going through the Indivisible map, trying to figure out where everyone was across the district. I update it probably sometimes once a week, but when I would find an Indivisible group, there's one, for example, at Phoenix High School here in the Valley. There's 39 groups across the Indivisible district. There's one at Phoenix High School called the PHS Multicultural Group, which sounds awesome. Young people, multicultural and everything. I have reached out to them. They will not get back to me as to who they are, what their email addresses are. That's just one example, okay? The rest of them over in the eastern part over there, I've had people say, well, we've got a group started, there's 4 of us meeting in a library, and here's me, but don't you give out my phone number. And please don't give out my email address, and don't tell anybody this is who we are. So they're afraid, they're intimidated, and at this point I have those numbers. I'd love to share them with you. I would love to make that master list public so everybody could reach out to all those people. I've given my promise to those people that I will not identify. I've tried to figure out how to butcher the list so you get parts of them or take out the email addresses, but that doesn't help the other groups that want to share their email addresses. So I will try after this retreat to go through it again and maybe just sort of blank out a couple of the ones so you can't see them, and then at least share what I have.
Great. So is this like the American South in the 60s? I mean, that kind of fear?
There's fear in Jackson County for Republicans. I mean, I've heard it all.
So I don't want to, sorry. So thank you all. As talking about some of the barriers that folks have to participation, I think is really important. And at the end of our strategy session today, we'll be identifying next steps. So maybe one of those next steps is to think about, data management systems that really work for us and preserve people's privacy. Maybe another next step is identifying people who can go out and reach out to neighboring communities and provide that kind of person-to-person interaction that makes people feel more comfortable. So we'll get there, and I appreciate that all of it's welling up right now. What I want to give you the opportunity to do is take a 10-minute break. So we'll come back at 10:15, and we'll move into our small groups so we can start putting our heads together and doing that work communities. How many people learned something that they were like, whoa, I didn't know that. I did too. And I think it's really important if we're going to work together there's a coordinated movement, a resistance movement, and a movement for change, that it's important to know and to listen to the communities that are a part of our district. So thank you so much for taking time to do that. So what we're going to move into next, I'll go through all of this. So now, again, at that district-wide level, we're going to start doing this brainstorming and thinking about the key elements that we need to build the foundation for our movement for change. So in this first breakout session, we're going to do 2, and we'll come back and report back in between. So in the first one, we're going to talk about creating our shared vision, talk about what our problem is, our vision, and what the change we need is. So the specific questions you'll be asking, we're breaking out into 6 groups, and each group will, we'll have a helper facilitator to keep people on track because we have limited time. So the questions we want to address in the first breakout is, what are the specific problems we're working to address in our congressional district? And again, we're thinking bigger overall. Later, we can take this home and do this in each of our counties, so we can get more specific. So we want to break down what those issues are. And I think a lot of us, we already heard some shared issues, but let's get more specific and talk about our issues. Let's talk about what our vision is for our district. Ideally, what would we like our whole district to look like? What would that feel like? And I think an important part of that conversation is, what are the changes that we need to bring that vision about? And that essentially becomes our goals. And then we're going to ask folks to answer the question, what is Indivisible's specific role or niche in helping to make that change happen? So are we political numbers experts? Well, probably not. We're probably not going to do that part of it. Are we going to run this campaign all by ourselves? Probably not. But this is an important conversation to have, and I'm interested to hear it from everybody. So again, how this is going to work is we're going to do 6 groups. You all are going to be answering the same question. This is just an easy way for us to break out and actually have a discussion. And then we'll come back and we'll do some report outs from each group and see where we have overlap, where there's consensus around those questions that we answered.